I thought it was so interesting that you guys decided to come together and kind of partner with all of your brands. So what inspired the partnership, and what was the intent behind it?
Well, the intent obviously is the synergy of, a strength in numbers. That's the simplicity of it. But as far as like how it came about, you have these, I wouldn't say we're competing because we're in totally different geographic locations and totally different months, but it's the type of events that there's some similarity, that we've all attended each other's events, either us personally, the people that actually produced the event, or some of our partner artists, or some of our team. You kind of, the Chosen Few obviously is like a holiday on July 4th for house heads, so that's, decades long. I mean, you've just been part of this. Charivari is kind of, we're not new to the game because we always do events, but as a festival, we're 9 years old. And then a House in the Park is going on their 5th, as well as WestCoast Weekender is going on their 5th. Yeah. So there's just a lot of synergy when you look at the artists being booked that have been floating back and forth. Like some of the Kai Alcee of the House in the Park has also played WestCoast Weekender, has also played Charivari. All of the Chosen Few, whether it be Wayne or Jesse or whoever, have come to Detroit and played events for us, and played for events in Atlanta, and played events in West Coast. So it's just, something about when the Chosen Few this year chose to book some of the outside artists like DJ Spin and Osalande, and how West Coast Weekender booked Juliet Mendoza and Delano Smith. It started just all coming together. It kind of makes sense that we should all talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So making some inroads and sending out some emails and back and forth. So over the months, we kind of like plotted and schemed and said, who's doing what, where, and with who, and just let's all put it together into a one major press release saying that, this promotional partnership, we're going to work together and do some economies of scale, on, boosting. If you're going to boost your social media, for example, if I have like the image that you got in the mail that had all 4 of us, it makes no difference. If I say I'm gonna do a $500 boost, why just have Charivari on there when everybody could take the same $500 ride across pretty much the same crew of people that you're boosting as house heads? I mean, we're already kind of a niche in itself. In a couple niche cities, whether you add New York or Baltimore or Philly, it's still Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, San Diego, San Fran, so if you pretty much pinpoint those cities with your boost, it's very much like what you do. I mean, there's the cities that you guys have chose to launch papers at. There's a reason for that. You're not going to go to Honolulu or Anchorage, Alaska, and launch an African-American person of color kind of centered periodical, At least that's my opinion. So
absolutely.
I felt with our promotion and talking to the guys and how we were promoting, I felt that we could do the same thing by just kind of pooling our cash, pooling our knowledge, pooling the artist connections. Everything works better that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It sounds, I just covered the organization Black Promoters Collective that have been doing the Maxwell concert edition. And the idea was very similar, that they thought, together, if we came together, a group of promoters, we would be able to put things out on a higher level, get more exposure to all of our brands, and bring in more quality and higher level experiences for people to enjoy. So I think it's so cool that you guys have done this for the house community, because like you said, we are, in these different different demographics, but we travel music. So, we like to get out and experience, the festival scene. What do you think is the significance of this partnership and collaboration as it pertains to preserving house music and dance music culture?
Well, I think everything that we talk about today is probably going to be going back to the original element of the strength in numbers. I think when you being surrounded by, say, tourists and new people to the community and corporate interests that have just looked at this now as hey, there's money in this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can get surrounded by superior cash flow, superior integration and stuff. And then it kind of, the original intent of it and the original curation of the cultural aspects and who started it and where it came from can get lost in the pudding of green. Mm. You know, I mean, once, you know, over the years, the original source of like house being Chicago or the original source of techno being Detroit and things, some of that is getting lost of who the creators were. And I'm not saying, I don't want this to turn into something that everything has to be black and white, but it can't be lost.
Right.
You know, it's I'm not trying to point fingers, but you know, I think the originators and where stuff come from is very important in the conversation. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, as cash starts exchanging hands, that can get lost. And then, you know, the originators, and nobody wants to talk about the chosen few in Chicago if you start getting all these mega festivals like ARC or anybody else that just kind of start taking over the landscape with whatever. Yeah. You know, you kind of, this original little picnic out of a family reunion just kind of gets thrown to the background. And I think those stories and that conversation should never get lost. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think with us getting together, our voices can get louder in where it came from, how it came from, and why it is. And really, I think as some of the original purveyors of this culture, I think we can keep a one-on-one conversation with the actual, the streets, basically, shall we say. You know?
Yeah, they've talked about, they've called it, I've heard it called the gentrification of house music, where you're seeing, you know, people who were not part of the culture originally, people who did not create this music, who've kind of taken it over and, quite frankly, made more money off of it than the people who originally started it in the cities, these urban cities, if we're just going to make it plain, black and brown, you know, communities that created, you know, an entire genre of music.
And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
If you look at segments, that is how they start pigeonholing people into ghettos and tribes. Mm-hmm. You know, so now it's no longer just house music. If you take the music that came from your city, now it's Chicago house.
Yep.
It's not. So then I can, if you want to talk about it originally was created by Chicago, you can say a Chicago house was originally created by Chicago. Mm-hmm. But all this other great house and popular house, this was all from somewhere else in Europe. Right. That's garbage. That's garbage. And, you know, they do that with techno now too, with Detroit. Detroit created techno, but now they've segmented it's Detroit techno. Mm-hmm. And everything else is a different techno. I said, that's garbage. It's garbage.
That's how they changed the history. That's how yes. They do it. That's that gentrification I'm talking about.
And that's that moving the flag where you no longer even know where the flag, the placeholder, you look up and there's 10 flags. How's it 10 flags of one discovery of the country?
Right. You know, that's so
it's
true.
One flag, you know. Yeah. And this is the thing, is as you know, house music is all about community and collective and more people being a part of this. So I want to make it perfectly straight. I have no problem with all the newcomers. I have no problem with the colors, the age, anything. Mm-hmm. What I have a problem of any forgetting of the source. Right. So what I have found is as things come and more people come into it, they don't want to talk about the past anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to start moving the flag up further to where, you know, we're going to set the flag in this year now, or this date, or this city. And I don't like that. We should always keep where the source is. And it should be anchored at the source. Not that all the money or all the attention has to go to the same people, but don't forget about it.
Right. And honor history. Honor the history.
I mean, it's no different than any type of thing. You're a journalist. You know, you have to base your stuff on facts. Yeah. And the fact is that this thing has, you know, cultural components to it. Mm-hmm. And it has originators and it has first and origin stories. So let's just continue to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the interesting thing about you guys coming together, even though it's rooted in house music, Atlanta, California, Detroit, Chicago, they're still very unique identifiers to the culture.
That's right.
In each of these cities. Can you speak to some of those unique identifiers?
I think the Chicago house sound has a very unique thing going all the way back to what I like about the house music history is many, and I'd almost say most of the people that started and really kind of create this culture are still alive. It's like living history. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had, you've had your giants out of your city, die, like Frankie Knuckles and things like that, but you still have the Jamie 326, the Glenn Underground, the whole Chosen Few family, Steve Silk Hurley and Farley. I mean, why are we trying to forget this? We're still standing here. This is not like some ancient history of where we get, you start talking about the Chopin and Beethoven and all. This is not that. Right. You can go to any of these cities. You can go to Baltimore and talk to Charisma or DJ Spin. You can go down to Atlanta and deal with Raymond Rosso and all these people. I mean, let's kind of, let's not let it get lost. Let's kind of put it together now and talk about the soulful sound of the South. You talk about the hard, like the techno-driven, house-driven sound of Detroit and industrial, and then you've got the kind of gospel, cool, vibey sound in Chicago. It's like you said, everybody has their own little thing. Let's bring it all together and create the full, vibe. There's a whole vibe of different elements of it. Let's bring it all together and give a taste. Every city should have a taste of everybody. And that's one of the things that we decided to do when we started this year's Charivari. The whole theme was vibe. We tried to come up with a whole theme. And that's when we started thinking, why don't we sprinkle pieces of all the elements of all these other elements of house, East Coast, West Coast, European, South. Let's bring it to Detroit. And then from that, it expanded to, why don't we just contact the source, period? Mm-hmm. Why don't we call the Chosen Few? Why don't we call the West Coast and start trying to figure out how can we all work together on not just the big festivals, but little satellite components that we could then take it on the road to other cities that don't have it. Like we have a pop-up coming in Phoenix, mm-hmm. We're going to do some stuff in Seattle. I think everybody can be flown. It's just a flight. So I can bring a house head from Chicago and put them with somebody from down south, and then you take them to Vegas. I mean, what does it matter? Let's take the circus on the road,
So this isn't just about festival season this summer. This is an ongoing kind of relationship that you guys are going to be having with activations around the country.
We would like it to be a work in progress. This is a bunch of grown folks putting all their feet in the same little water bucket to see how we can get along and play with each other's toys. and I think long as everybody stays in their lane and does their thing, I think this is going to become slowly start morphing into a much bigger animal, Mm-hmm. And I think this is the thing when you've had people that have been doing this for decades, you do get set in your ways in a particular way. So you have to be open to the communication and to the camaraderie of, hey, something you might tell me. I'm like, no, I only wear red. And you're like, well, I kind of like orange, mm-hmm. So maybe, we can all blend it together and stuff. And this is what it's going to be, a work in progress. But so far, so good. I think the launch of the Ideal, obviously, if it intrigued you, we were hoping that that's a geometric effect, that if somebody like you was intrigued, that maybe someone else will be intrigued and check out what we're all trying to do.
Yeah. And I also think it speaks to, there's always a lot of social media discussion and debate about the unity in this scene amongst festivals, amongst DJs. And this is a perfect illustration of, very successful festivals. You guys are successful in your individual festivals on your own, but to be able to link up, partner, and really kind of promote this kind of united front is good for the culture as well.
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes we all talk the talk, but can we walk the walk? It's like, it's easy for you to stick this camera in front of me and me talk all this unity stuff. But then when it comes down to trying to split money or do something together, it's mine.
Right.
I just think if you carve out your own little weekend for your festival, obviously that's going to be something you're concentrating on. But the rest of the calendar is wide open for outreach to anybody. And what I ultimately like to do is a whole educational component of helping other promoters in every region. And sometimes it's like, say, for example, yourself. If I didn't have this conversation with you today, why would I know that you are also a vocalist and a artist of yourself working with Terry Hunter? So if you launch your EP and you want to get out, how do you get to people like me and other people to let us know that maybe you'd like to perform, maybe you'd like to be paid for your services? So and everybody kind of creating this component and almost making a data bank of information where we can exchange best practices and contacts and things like that. I think it will expand the whole culture back to that whole unity thing, like I said, because just like you got this press release, it could be certainly like a thing like when you launch, you have your contacts, but then we can push it further to our contacts as well. So why can't, instead of you just doing shows for the people that you already know, why can't we set up a network for you?
Yeah.
Of house, there's house promoters in every city almost that nobody even knows of. I mean, I've been doing it for 4 decades and I'm meeting people because of COVID. Everybody was home and you started just reaching out. You'd read a little line somebody would say, and I'd reach out to somebody like you and say, hey, and then me and you exchange stories.
Yeah.
And now there's a network, there's a relationship. And I think the unity thing really has to be taken not as just a word. It has to be taken as a practice. And we have to start doing it for real.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you think the Chicago, Atlanta market, Detroit market would want to know about, put your house in order?
No, I think true house heads, they know what's coming. It's going to be some heat coming and it's going to be, not more of just the same. And I don't mean that as a negative. I just mean that I think when this many people come together with this much information and this much experience, I think there will be some more reach out to some of the emerging artists, which I think is very important because, as you know, culturally, I mean, we're just an older breed of party goers. And it's time you have to reach back and constantly evolve and constantly bring in new blood, or we're going to go the way of the dodo. It's like, and that to me should outlive, to me, everything is legacy. And I don't want to take everything I know and every component of what we all do collectively. I don't want to take that into the grave or into retirement or anything. There should constantly be a trail of people coming behind us that keep refreshing, keep replacing, so we can keep this culture alive. So if there's anything I would say to anybody that would read your stories or know what we have going on, if they have something to give, if they have something to share, if they just want to find out more, that reach out, join the cause. Let's push it forward. If you have a friend that's a DJ or somebody needs to be noticed, start screaming out loud. It's not going to just happen,
Yeah, it's a great way. Like I said, it's about creating that ecosystem. One of the best advice Terry told me, I think he said Jazzy Jeff had told him this. And he said, you should want to die empty. And it took me a minute to understand what that meant. But that really is what it's about, is giving it.
I like that.
And allowing that next generation to kind of bring it to the next level. That's how the culture.
That's everything to me. It's like, to me, like right now, one of my main concentrations is my daughter, who's an upcoming artist. And why should I sit here and just act like, oh, I'm still trying to get this shine?
Yeah.
Shine should be shared.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a spotlight. It should be a floodlight.
I like that.
What I'm saying? that's the problem in this business. Sometimes there's too many people trying to get, as you say, the spotlight. When, hey, we can set up a floodlight, we can set up a whole bunch of lights. Why, we are all
everybody.
Yes, these festivals and these parties are loud enough, and they're definitely you can't play every song, you can't play every hour. Share some of the time, and let's bring some new folks on, and I'm all about that. And I think the other guys are too, just judging by what they're doing. I see them break new artists. It doesn't always have to be the mainstream guy or the Main Street gal. It can be some where's the new 19-year-old guy?
Yeah.
Where's the new 17-year-old girl that's wanting to spin? I mean, let's get them. Let's get everybody.
Yeah.
Let's carve out some time and make it happen.
Especially with restrictions and everything, us getting back outside. I was just telling Terry, I think this year is going to be.
Oh, it's going to be. You guys are going to be bananas this year because you've been gone for 2 years.
Yeah.
It's going to be bananas.
And I think that's how it's going to be kind of around. We're all just excited. And one thing that I love about House, you said it really is about the music and the community. And
that's right.
I always tell my kids, you don't know how to experience a party until you feel that kind of.
I agree with that.
That love just from, random people. I've met so many people.
Yes.
Music,
And that, is it, to me, I try to explain to people that it's, the music, first of all, is like the common denominator. It's like the unifying thing that goes above gender, race, sexual preference, whatever. It's just music. We all like good music. But the whole house music community, for the most part, you go to these events, it's almost like religion. It's almost, and it's hard to explain the conversion that happens, like you said, where you can sit there and dance or talk right to a total stranger and everybody's like, woo, you're right in that groove. But then that same person, you find yourself through the rest of the day, you're having drinks with them, you're eating, you're talking, and then you're actually catching up. I mean, and social media has really leveled that playing field, the communication that I can say, hey, I'll be in Chicago next week, and you can say, hey, I'm going to this party, and then we can meet there and have another drink.
That's true.
And it just keeps.
When I come to Detroit.
that network has to be kept going alive in other cities too, because I think we have to to use the religion analogy, you got to bring the gospel everywhere.
Yeah.
And then, you think about it, house events don't have all that fighting and shooting and. It's just, we've hosted this event for 9 years, not one fight, not even a push. Security has done nothing but eat sandwiches and drink water. What I'm saying? And I talked to other house promoters and they say the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. Same.
So what's funny to me is in the media, when you look at you would think this was all almost European, all 20 to 30 something white folk phenomena. If you read DJ Mag and Accelerator and all these places and stuff, it looks like we don't exist anymore. So I found that interesting with the team up too. And that's one of the components that I think eventually, if we can't be heard, then you have to scream louder somewhere else. If that means creating our own dynamic through a newsletter or through a common Facebook group or something like that, we got to tell your own story.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, as Black media, we cover events like this heavily because it's not promoted. It's not to show in cities like Detroit, Atlanta, Chicago, where there's always a lot of national talk about violence and this thing. Let me show you
something else,
something different. All these Black and brown people coming together for 10, 12 hours out the day.
Thousands.
Having a ball, eating, drinking, dancing, and never an incident.
Thousands.
That's newsworthy. And it never gets that kind of attention that it should. That's one of the reasons why we make a point to make sure that we cover it, because we're about changing that narrative. You know what I mean? And I think, events like this need to be promoted, not just because they're positive, but our young people also need to see it's possible.
That's
possible.
I think that's the avenue. And I think, it's just important.
Yeah.
It's just important. This is not it's a cultural phenomena. It's not just some blip. When you start talking about a music genre and parties and functions that have been going on for decades, then that's not some just little faddy type thing that's come and gone. I mean, this is like, it's religion, you know, and it's here. And it's our job as the caretakers of this to keep the gospel going, basically. So that's why we're here. That's why we're having this conversation, that this needs to be shared.